Hello and welcome. You're watching QTV and you're watching the Week in Review. I'm Ari Darami, and to go through some fantastic stories with me, I have the return of my regular co-host, Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Adi. I missed the place.
Thank you, and we missed you too. Nothing against Mr. Choi, who was here last week. But if you are a new or even a regular viewer, let me explain briefly how this works. We take 10 big stories from the week and we go through them in some detail. So we'll be hearing about the President's address to the United Nations General Assembly. We'll be hearing about the spate of murder cases that have come up across the country. We'll also be hearing about National Assembly members here debating the State of the Nation address. And we'll also hear about some people whose houses might be about to be demolished, and how they're reaching out to them to see what they think about it and what they think about compensation. So all these and much, much more. So first story, really only one place to start. Right now it is the UN General Assembly is still on in New York. And His Excellency the President, Adama Barrow, was there and he gave a speech. Here's some of it.
We must underscore the centrality of the United Nations' unique role and potential to make a huge difference in the lives of the people. Durable solutions that match the magnitude and intensity of the never-ending challenges remain the Assembly's greatest challenge.
They're just a snippet of President Barrow's speech there, Mr. Mboj. Before I ask what were your takeaways from the speech, I have to say, if I was giving marks out of 10 for brevity or sticking to time, he would have been one of the only ones who got 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. They were given 15 minutes and he spoke, if you're an anorak, for 15 minutes and 3 seconds. So he stuck to time. But Mr. Mboj, what were your takeaways from that speech? It was quite wide-ranging.
That was it. See, we can do time.
Indeed, indeed we can.
Those who doubt us, if you set your mind to it.
This is it. It's achievable.
Absolutely. It was sensible, middle of the road kind of thing, wasn't it? Nothing controversial.
Sure.
Supported the top dogs where you need to, perhaps with the exception of one.
Yes,
said all the things that he need to say. Perhaps we'll go into them one by one.
Indeed, yes.
So generally, effectively done.
Sure.
The high rhetoric, that's what you said. We used to have that.
Yes.
Afterwards, I thought about the one that Haile Selassie gave. Was it in 1936, just after the Italian invasion, wasn't it? And then he said, now it's our turn. You will be next. 1939 happened, and that sort of thing. How right he was.
Yes. So we didn't get the fiery rhetoric from anybody, from any African leader. However, there were some, as I said, some points, and as you've mentioned there, that President Barrow. So let's take Cuba, for example, the embargo on Cuba. In fact, colleagues around the office were asking me to explain what the embargo on Cuba was all about. So take it away.
Absolutely. Not surprised. I mean, in the UN, they voted in favor 29 times. And the overwhelming support, overwhelming majority of members supporting that ending of the lifting of the embargo. Sure. But it's not happening.
It's never happened.
Well, first put in place was in 1960.
That's right.
And then in 62, they strengthened it.
That's right.
And then Trump came and added apparently 240 new
restrictions.
Yes. Absolutely. And that was what? A result of the Cold War.
Yeah, indeed, very much so. The Cold War and the fact that there'd been a revolution in Cuba, which had overthrown really a kind of American puppet regime.
That's the Batista.
Yes, Fulgencio Batista's regime. And when you think about it, in that time of Cuba and so on, there's been the Korean War, there's been the Vietnam War, there's been Afghanistan. All of these nations that the United States has gone to war with, they are now business partners in most cases, and yet Cuba remains a sticking point, mainly due to internal American politics and the Cuban lobby that's there.
Yes, that's absolutely it. This is what we were saying the other day on Drive Time.
Sure.
They have a strong lobby in the US.
Particularly in Miami.
Absolutely. So, and it seems like be Democrat or Republican, you'll be very, very careful. I mean, Obama tried to maneuver, but still...
When the noises started, he pulled back.
He pulled back. That's it. So what has Joe Biden done?
Sure.
Nothing much really to ease the restrictions imposed by Trump. So as I said, there's that domestic politics that will determine really America's stance for a very long time.
And another takeaway from the president's speech for you?
Western Sahara.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
another interesting one there. Well, Morocco, they claim to that territory since 75. So there's been a lot of history behind it, really. And then they formed what the Polisario Front, 1976. Remember, in the 80s, that was in the news, you had a lot about the Polisario Front. Not so much now. Absolutely. So they formed what they call the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic.
That's right.
And like. But the interesting thing here is the OAU recognized it in 1984.
This is it. This is it.
That's
much to Morocco's disgust.
They withdrew, didn't they?
Yeah, they withdrew.
Until 2017.
That's right.
So, this is it. So it appears as if over the years, I understand that more than 80 countries have ever really recognized them.
That's right, yes.
Of course, over the years, also a good number have also withdrawn.
Yeah, that's true.
But it tells you about whether you support or you withdraw full of the vagaries of politics.
Yeah, true. So, okay, so the president was there. Lots of people saying he spoke about lots of external stuff, not stuff that's directly relatable to the Gambia. And he wasn't the only one. I looked out of professional duty through most of the African president's speeches, and only the president from Botswana made the speech, which was very good, quite short as well, although he was 18 minutes. But and he said, 20 years ago our country was poor, and then we discovered the biggest lot of diamonds anywhere in the world, and now we're rich. He said, but we still can't get people to come and invest in our country other than in diamonds. So come and invest. He was the only one who made that kind of plea. Imagine you have a global audience, you have presidents and prime ministers from every nation, you have businessmen watching. None of them made that plea, not even our own president.
Absolutely. So it appears as if they all sort of conceptualize how the speech should be, should be in the 15 minutes. This is the general debate, isn't it?
Quite.
So each member's got the 15 minutes. So this is standard, isn't it? Yeah. So they all see their roles, the purpose. Differently, so different purposes. So that was an interesting one. This is a variation, as it were. He was more doing a PR for his country and come and invest and that sort of thing. Yes, but for me, there's also a more general point, and the point he first addressed: the centrality of the UN to make a difference. This is the General Assembly. The other day we were saying that this is a talking shop. What happens? The real power is in the Security Council. So what is really the General Assembly, the UN for? I think every time we must think about this. For me now, I want to put it in the context of what Dag Hammarskjöld once said, that the UN was not created to bring us to heaven. It was to prevent us from going to hell. So it's more of a defensive thing, isn't it?
Yes.
So really, I understand it in that sense. Then we try to maneuver and see the best we can get out of it. But it's good to understand it for what it is.
Absolutely. And if any of our viewers are wondering, we will spend longer on some stories than we will on others. So don't panic. So thank you for that. And we wait and see whether anything happens once the General Assembly happens. One of the things that the UN did, just to close, is that they've kind of looked at their presence in Congo as peacekeepers, and they've said that it was a failure, that it's been a failure. So that was quite an admission, and that admission was made this week at this General Assembly.
Absolutely, and it's important where we fail, we admit.
We admit that we
you know what I mean? Because you inspire trust, don't you? And then that makes relationships much easier.
Indeed. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now on to our second story. This one, I'm not sure whether we'll spend as long on it as on the first one, but here in the Gambia, the police have confirmed that in a single month, there's been quite a spike in the number of murders, many of them knife-related. Have a look.
Hardly a week goes by without Gambians waking up to some sad news about crime, including murder cases. Cadet ASP Bintanjai, the public relations officer of the Gambia Police Force, gave the statistics of murder cases.
on the 14th of September, we had 3 recorded cases, and the 15th as well. So within a month, we have 6. So people think it is high, but it's because of the proximity of the occurrences and also because it's reported. But looking at the statistics, the facts are there.
The new PRO from the police force there, Mr. Mboch, telling us, now I've been engaged in a series of exchanges, let me put it that way, on Twitter with Gambians who have said that there's been this spike because they saw and heard me on Drive Time. They actually quoted Drive Time, one of them, and said, I heard Adi Darami say on Drive Time that these cases are being reported more rather than there being more of these murders, and so we kind of got into it. Now, I don't have the figures from 2015 to date, but I have asked the police if they can let us have the statistics, because I'm still convinced that it's more a case of them being reported. However, the person who was engaging with me is a doctor at the main referral hospital, and he said, we see the murder cases. I can tell you the numbers are going up. So, Mr. Mboch, should we all start getting worried?
What I did was I went to the WHO website. They've got this violence info.
That's right.
There was something on Gambia.
Yep.
2019, from 2019 statistic, 8.3 per 100,000.
That's right.
So just to put it in context, the world average is 6.1.
Yep. Yep. Sure.
But another thing here as well, 2000 we had 11.7.
That's right.
So you've seen that over that period, it's been going down. It's been dropping. Yes. Yeah. But here again, 3 murders in one day.
Well, that's right.
I thought, is something changing here? So let's be careful here.
Yeah.
So I was quite staggered by that. So yes, I understand, but yet 3 murders in one day, maybe there's something else going on. So be alert. Be alert.
Well, this is it, and 7 in a month.
7 in a month.
In a country of this size, that's quite shocking.
I wonder, have we ever had that? How many times have we had 7 in a month,
well, that's,
as it were?
In fact, that's what the in the longer piece, the police PRO was saying, that because they've all happened in a short space of time, in fact, we're saying in a month, most of them have happened within about 10 days in that month. And so it looks really quite shocking and so on. If anybody's worried, I'm not comparing us to America, gun crime alone, murders in America last year, 35,000. Just from guns, never mind knife and anything else. But we're a much smaller country, and so of course we feel the impact more. And of course social media helps to spread these things faster. We saw somebody who had been killed, and within minutes people were sharing images of the dead body from the scene.
Absolutely.
So that doesn't help, does it?
And here, different culture, different relationships, to the American bit, and we don't sell guns. No wonder that it's knives or machetes. Absolutely, and we've been seeing this, haven't we? The slightest protest, as it were, or in demonstrations, you tend to see some people coming out with machetes and the like. So, absolutely, possibly there's something here that we must investigate, not rest on our laurels, if you like. Saying that, oh, the statistics show that, rates of crime is going down, that sort of thing. I'm not sure. Things can reverse. Huh?
They can.
So you must always be on your toes, be watchful of that.
We need to be watchful, and also please stop saying these people committing these are not Gambians. I'm sick and tired of hearing that. It's rubbish. Please stop it.
and the checkpoints.
Yes, indeed.
Quite interesting.
Yes,
not
quite.
Illegal, apparently.
That's unofficial.
Unofficial.
Yes.
But based on discretion.
That's
you see,
right.
I'm very watchful of that.
Sure.
The discretion, I think, must be reserved for the very, very top.
Indeed.
They take the decisions.
Indeed.
Because we are told, people who study management and the like, too much of discretionary power may provoke corruption.
Of course.
Absolutely. So I'm very, very, I'm not sure about that. And when you tell me that it is necessary, okay, why change it?
Sure, indeed.
You tell me that it is necessary.
That's right. And now you decided to take them away.
You have decided to take them away and bring in the mobile patrol should have been there anyway.
Indeed.
Long time ago, so that you can respond. I mean, we've been saying this for a very long time.
They'll probably tell you they haven't got fuel, Mr. Mboch.
Yeah, or we don't have this. We don't have it.
Sure. Indeed, but thanks for that. And now on to our third story, and this is completely different one. If you've been watching Gambia for the last year or 2 or 3, you'll realize that at some point, we don't know the date yet, Gambia will be hosting the OIC summit. And as a result of that, in some cases, houses are having to be demolished to make way for all sorts of things, in some cases for expansions to the roads. How do people feel about having their houses demolished? Have a look, have a listen.
Reaching out to the community, you all heard how receptive they were, how much they appreciated our presence. In fact, it is definitely, it touched my heart where you hear them asking each other to be patient, to support, even if one is affected. They themselves were doing the job for us in terms of making people understand that our role here and our purpose here is to develop.
Addressing concerns raised by the affected people, especially regarding compensation, Mr. C went on to give assurances to them that they will be compensated as soon as possible.
It will be difficult to give monetary value because there will be variables associated. Let's say that one of the men in the audience who asked, it's not your choice to bring your fence down, it is the authorities that are bringing your fence down, then they are going to compensate.
Now in Samboj, their outreach to people, is this a case of putting the cart before the horse? You're about to demolish and then you consult and reach out to the people and tell them, this is why we're going to do it, and this is the compensation you're going to get. Should that not have been done? I mean, we've known for how many years that we were going to be hosting this, and we knew where the roads were and the places where demolitions were due to happen. Why are they now holding this in the kind of 59th minute of the 11th hour? Why?
For me, I put it differently. The question I've got here, was this the first time they reached out?
Yeah.
I would like, because it is, I cannot really understand this, because I would like to think that they've been planning for a while, and they had identified during the planning the houses that need to be demolished, and all that information. I don't get it. Well, how much time do they have?
Well, to your first question about is this the first time, as somebody who lives in a compound where the garden wall was demolished, I can tell you categorically, nobody consulted us. They came and they demolished it on a given day. And in fact, it got quite aggressive. There was no consultation. And we just knew that because we'd seen the ones further down the road that were in the path, that at some point ours would be affected. And sure enough, come the day, they came with their sledgehammers and they took to it with some relish. They seemed to enjoy their work that day. But there was no consultation.
That's it. And I was wondering there when I saw the number of people sitting in the tent, I wonder how many people are affected.
Yeah, it would be nice to know the numbers.
Yes, the numbers. And they should have been sort of negotiating from a long time. It's not all of them, obviously, but just get sort of representatives, as it were, and then thrash out whatever you need to do so that they'll know what to do next as well. So now I'm wondering, how long have they got? This, as far as I'm aware, they're working on what compensation and the like, so that hasn't happened. So, and then we're saying that we're accelerating work. So what, are they going to move first before they're compensated? How long would it take?
Well, this is it.
I don't understand.
The mathematics get complicated because if it was just a perimeter wall that was knocked down, you'll get a certain amount. If it was a whole house or the whole half of a house, and so on, all of that. But those calculations could have been done a year or two back, not now when it's about to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, putting pressure on them.
Yeah, of course.
In many ways, yeah, but that's what's going to happen.
Indeed.
Oh boy.
But yeah, people apparently are quite understanding, which is nice.
Absolutely.
Because we spoke to some of them and they said, yes, we realize this is going to affect us, but it's progress, which was nice to hear.
Yes, but, you know, that's the right spirit.
Indeed.
But again, we have to say that the authorities perhaps should have sort of done this much.
They could have done better. Yeah, they could have done better. Thank you. And on to our fourth story. Now, it's not often that assembly members debate long into the night. But this time, not only did they debate long into the night, they debated long into the night and to the next morning. How late? 5 a.m. the following day is when they finished. What were they debating? The State of the Nation address. Here's a snippet.
The debate continues with most of those taking part in it giving critical points of arguments against the statement about the Banjo Rehabilitation Project, while some appear to offer some advice for the NAM for Latrikuna Sabiji on his statement. Here are Deputy Speaker and Minority Leader for the Assembly taking part in the debate.
I even beg to differ. It is not an exceptional public interest, this paper he brought here. It is not. Because the people of Bandul and the people of this country are grateful to the project, and it has not caused any harm. It has not caused any damages. It is not negative. It's only positive, and it's the best interest of this country, not only the people of Bandul.
It got quite heated, as you can hear there, and perhaps they could have learnt from the UN General Assembly and imposed time limits, because when our colleagues went to cover on the first day, they got to the end of the evening and only 4 had spoken, and they were told there are another 29 on the list still to speak. So they knew that they either were going to have to sleep there or they were going to come and file a story. However, what you then got is that people seem to be raising points based on what was not in the statement rather than what was in it. What was your impression?
Absolutely, that was it. And right there, our clip there, that was the Deputy Speaker.
Indeed, getting quite animated.
Absolutely, so fiery in support, wasn't it, of the Bandul Rehabilitation Project.
Yes.
In spite of the reservations, as it were, of the National Audit Office.
Indeed.
There's something they said
Indeed.
about that.
That's right.
And others have raised certain concerns.
Sure.
But I also thought, should the Deputy Speaker, I think, you know, when the Speaker is not there, you're going to sit.
Yes.
So should he be that partisan, as it were? That's
I'm
quite
glad you used the
nakedly-
word partisan.
Yeah, that was quite nakedly a partisan remark.
Sure.
Should it be so openly partisan? I'm not sure about that as well. Yes, so now, yes, when we go to the National Assembly members, we've heard sort of objections or contributions, you know, touching on all sorts of things, the foreign troops, as it were, in here, economic, a lot on the health.
and saying things like, why didn't he mention the transport situation in the country? Sure.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Well, I'm not sure whether State of the Nation address really goes into the details.
They tend not to.
They tend not to, don't they? So you tend to get general outlines of achievements and legislative frameworks, big projects and the like. So,
yeah,
really.
and also, I mean, they took the president to task saying he came late. And so I checked last year, there's only 10 days difference between his State of the Nation address last year and this. So I'm not sure why that was a big deal. But apparently it seemed for some of them, and they wanted him told off in no uncertain terms that he shouldn't do it again.
Yes, absolutely. Maybe they want this to be a kind of state opening of Parliament. Would it be on the first day? Is that how it happens? Is that what they want? But to me, this is kind of a secondary issue.
Really.
Because I think he did it early enough.
Yeah, sure.
After all, they had their first session not long ago. Choi's been reporting on them, isn't it? It's not that long.
Sure.
So for me, that point is very secondary. Really.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for that. And on to our 5th story. And this one is to do with a drug trafficker who was arrested. Not just any drug trafficker, but apparently a regular drug trafficker. How does he get to be regular? Have a look, have a listen.
Among a series of arrests, one was in May 2022 when he was charged at the Carnifin Magistrate Court for being in possession of prohibited drugs and trafficking, dealing and supplying prohibited drug, and transporting a prohibited drug.
And we believe that the case history of an individual, especially someone who has appeared in court and has pleaded guilty, he's not a first-time offender, and most of the time he's not arrested with, let's say, it's not these wraps we're talking about. You're not talking about bundles. You're talking about 50 bundles, 75 bundles, or sometimes other types of drugs. Going to court, pleading guilty. When the Act has said, Section 43 is very clear, for trafficking cases, it's 1 million and the mandatory jail term of 10 years. But you use alternative sentencing guidelines, referring to either the CPC or other provisions, and then fining them 80, 70,000. is not going to help the situation. Because otherwise, at the end of the day, the public will lose confidence in us, and they will lose confidence in the criminal justice system.
There you heard from the Drug Law Enforcement Agency, and I chose that bit because the gentleman there wanted to make a particular point. And if you look at when they talk about alternative sentencing guidelines, they're meant to be used, as he said, for the odd rap or two, not for somebody who's transporting bundles as part of a big business. And he specifically used this press conference to criticize these alternative sentencing. So that was quite a break from the norm, wasn't it?
Absolutely. To me, that was it. That was an attack on the judicial process.
Yeah, sure.
That's essentially what it said. Sure. Because one of the questions I had there, when I heard that one of the suspects arrested there, was also arrested in May.
Oh, that's right.
And then apparently he's a serial offender here.
Right.
So I'm like, how come he keeps escaping, coming back to the streets all the time? What's going on here? Sure. So I thought, perhaps should we revisit sentencing?
Which is what the kind of was getting
That's really
at.
what he's saying there. But for me as well, that is true, that's one part. But for me as well, these seizures, what do they tell me about the underlying trade, the general trade?
Sure.
Because the successful ones, trade, drug deals, as it were, you don't capture them.
Sure.
So is this a sort of a drop in the ocean that we're catching here? So it's difficult for me to really judge.
Sure.
How do I judge this? I have to say,
sure. But nonetheless, I think the sentencing guidelines need to be looked at because if the law says one thing and then the magistrates and the judges are taking another, then I guess you'll probably never get rid of the serial offenders such as this chap.
Absolutely. So things must be coordinated.
Sure.
Government program, how well is coordinated between different ministries, as it were. It appears not. Let us be honest. We heard, wasn't it? Well, we read somewhere there was an article also shared where apparently one of the people with the Tony Blair Foundation was here to try help to sort of professionalize, as it were, our organization, how we organize things, especially in the State House, was it?
State House, yes.
And then he left.
Yes, including a friend of mine.
Absolutely, because apparently he couldn't professionalize, as it were, the whole setup.
Sure.
We've had our suspicions, but this is really the key.
Sure.
With the National Development Plan now, it's been revised, there's another name. Whether you're going to see the outcomes will depend on how well you organize. You just cannot rig it, as it were, and it appears as if it's not happening.
It's not happening. Thank you for that. And that takes us nicely to the end of our fifth story and nicely into a commercial break. Join us after this break.
As the fastest growing GSM company in the Gambia, QCell has the widest 4G plus coverage in the country, 3 times faster internet speed than our competitors. So switch now and dial *335# and enjoy what true 4G feels like. QCell, the Gambia's trusted network.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching The Week in Review. I'm Ari Darami, and here going through the stories with me has been my regular co-host, Mr. Mboj. Mr. Mboj, as ever, thank you.
My pleasure.
And I say Mr. Mboj was away last week, but it's good to have him back, and we've already had 5 stories, and we've got 5 more to go. Now, next up, a lecturer who was at pains to say that he's not a political scientist, but a political science lecturer at the University of the Gambia, has been quite scathing about opposition parties and civil society organizations. Regarding what? Well, have a look, have a listen.
The UTG lecturer had their suggestions to strengthen government and the opposition.
To strengthen them, the laws must be there, but the laws are already there. There is no particular law in this country that is stopping opposition parties and civil society from holding their government to account. So I think they just need to take the bull by the horn, make sure that they play their role, holding the government to account, but also importantly, we need informed citizenry. We need to educate our citizens about the role of opposition, the role of government in a democratic society.
I think he said it all there. That was Esanjai. I had the pleasure of sharing the This Morning platform with him, and that was a snippet, but he was quite scathing about the political parties and their lack of opposition. He's saying, you know, that's your job and you're not doing it.
Yes, and when he says that he's a political science lecturer, but not a political scientist, I just sort of remembered Professor Ramadan Doumbouya, Probably College, who taught us politics. Probably College, he taught us politics. So when we ask him a question, he will break it up into this. He said, are you asking me as a politicized being, man is a political animal, or as a politician, he was former vice president, or as a political scientist, he lectures a professor of that. So keeping these categories in mind, so I looked at this. So he says there were election-oriented opposition. I said, yes, I get what you mean. That is very true. But I looked at, okay, PDOIS, for instance, which is more of a values, if you like, oriented opposition. But it's not been successful.
That's true.
So maybe there's a structural issue here. It's just the nature of the people. We talk about the politics of patronage, but that is because the society is sort of patrimonial.
It's
you know what I mean?
We are a reflection of that.
We are that.
Sure.
So I'm not sure whether the institutions can mature beyond its people.
Sure.
If you know what I mean. So I understand exactly what he's saying.
Sure.
But I don't see any chance of it yet. These are things that sort of evolve.
And kind of, that's what he was saying to us when we spoke on and off air. He was saying that what you need to do is educate the ones who are coming up so that they change that. You know, we know that because of the kind of 22 years of dysfunctional government that we had, people could not practice what it meant to be in a real democracy. And again, I keep using this phrase, we're still learning how to do that. And so what he was saying was that, in a sense, he's given up on most of the older generation and he's pinning his hopes on the younger ones. If they are educated to know their rights, know what the rights of an opposition party should be, and know what the rights and the remit of a civil society organization should be.
Absolutely. And we have to understand that political parties behave the way they do because of the landscape, the political landscape, the ecology.
Of course.
This is just what is. And the youth, I have to be honest with you, Ade, I see the youth doing something very similar to what the older generation was doing. Their relationship to government, to the state, I'm not sure whether it has shifted, and this is where we really need these things to shift.
This is true.
They continue to be as materialistic as we were.
This is
so the temptations, I am not sure whether the young people are any different. The rhetoric appears to suggest so. Or they talk a wonderful rhetoric, but when it comes to the action, I'm not so sure. I was once invited by a group, I wouldn't say who, but then we were supposed to start 10 o'clock. I said, all right, let me test these kids and see whether they're doing things differently. Until midday going on, it hadn't started. Okay, then I will sort of sympathize with them as well, because one of the guests who should have been on the panel, my generation, didn't come on time either. So you see what I mean, these interlocking things. So the young must really rally, have a sense of purpose, just get that critical mass. You can never have everybody in the same basket. What does that mean? You're going to bound to have variety within any group. But all you need, like in all societies, a critical mass of people who have sort of grasped their historical role. Just as post-independence. Remember that generation? We were full of, they were full of
willing to shake up the
optimism, euphoria, wanted to shake up. There was a mission. It appears today the only mission is, I don't know, my car, big house.
Or to get into a position of power.
Get into a position of power, to enrich myself. It seems that's the mission now.
Depressing. Let's hope that changes. Thank you, Mr. Mboj. And now on to our 7th story. World Peace Day. Yes, there is such a beast. And it is a UN day and is commemorated, obviously, annually including this year. Have a look.
The celebration of peace varies between countries. For the UN this year, the program will begin with the traditional Peace Bell ceremony in the Peace Garden, where the Secretary General and the President of the General Assembly will ring the Peace Bell. This will follow by a youth observance in the Economic and Social Council chamber, in which more than 500 students will interact with the Secretary General and high-profile artists and activists. Young people will present projects that illustrate the action they have taken to combat racism and thereby foster peace. The hope we hold on to is that one day we will have a world where peace prevails every day, not just for one day in September.
Our colleague Ajibintu Drame there, Mr. Mboju and I are smiling, laughing, because for as long as human beings have existed, there has been war, as well as the odd breakout of peace. But this year the theme was End Racism, Build Peace. And yet when we look around us, really, we don't even have to go far, either in our sub-region or on African continent, in Europe, in Asia. There are wars breaking out endlessly.
Absolutely. You called it a beast piece, this small piece there. Yeah. I call it a chimera, a kind of mirage. There's really something, because what does peace mean? And when you look at our situation, the human being, how we organize ourselves, it's like conflict is built into human organization. It's just human nature. Yeah. So here the key would be, how do I manage conflict? Knowing that there's always a potential for it to erupt, and there would always be potential for war. Sure. So what do we do? How can I manage that? But the idea that you can reach a world where you will have peace for a very, very long time. One can have it for certain periods, but inbuilt in that is that
we remember the famous phrase, peace in our time.
Absolutely.
And of course, there's nothing of the sort.
What does it mean? And the end racism bit.
Sure.
I said, oh, still the dream, isn't it? Don't you go back to Martin Luther King. You know what I mean? Hope one day my children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
If only.
That is so difficult. Sure. Not least because we define ourselves by our race.
Indeed.
I remember
whether
when
we
we were,
like it or not, whether we like to admit it or not.
Yes. Oh, I'm black, I'm proud. I'm like, I'm not sure about that.
Sure.
I didn't make myself black. I only take pride in stuff that I've done, my own effort, my own stuff. Yes. So for me, my blackness, neither pride nor shame. It's just a fact.
It's a fact.
I don't know how to be emotionally attached to facts. You know what I mean? They're just there. Sure. And then we tend to think that black is culture and such kind of thinking. Like, I go back to Alan Locke, the first African-American Rhodes Scholar, who once said, color is not culture.
Yeah, quite.
that is not true. Right. So it disabused me of that. So sort of one is trying, I think it can only be an individual journey, if you like. I'm not sure whether collectively one can do that, I'm not sure.
And interestingly, when in 1962 they had the first World Festival of Negro Arts in our neighboring country, Dakar, there was a symposium which asked that very question.
Absolutely.
Is culture the same as this, the color of the skin? And of course, they debated long into the night. And
I think by now that argument has lost respectability in certain circles, in academia and that sort of thing. What does it mean?
Yeah.
But this will take a long time. We define ourselves by it and also think, oh, this is going to take a very, very long time.
Sure, yeah.
I don't think that sort of racial discrimination will always be here, because I do hear from anthropologists that there was a time they're not sure whether it was there.
This is it. Yes.
Yes, so I'm not sure about that. But it will take a long time. Yes, and even if it's going to change, new discriminations would emerge.
Oh, of course, inevitably.
A moral being necessarily must discriminate. That's the unfortunate about it. You have to
DNA.
prefer one thing over another.
That's it. It's a fact.
So it's a convoluted idea, really. It's philosophically quite nutty.
Sure. Thank you for that. So World Peace Day, as I said to my colleague who was doing the story, I said of all the UN days, this, I think, is the one that has given them the toughest job to attain. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now on to our 8th story. And interestingly, what Mr. Mboj mentioned in relation to another story makes an appearance here. I won't spoil it for you. Just have a look and a listen.
You have to discipline yourself, because 5 years from now, or even before 5 years from now, you'll be leading some great institutions in this country. So if you don't discipline yourself to be on time in your official deliberations, how much can you deliver for the people? Secondly, the youth in this country, generally, I would say the whole population, people like to play blame game in politics. Politics is the business of every citizen of this country. Nothing in this country will work without politics.
Nothing will work without politics. But Mr. Mboj, somebody who shared your sentiments, because of course he had turned up on time, and the young people who had organized it had not turned up on time, and so he let them know about it. That if you're serious, then timekeeping is equally important, Mr. Mboj. But in the wider context of this, it was the youth actually engaging with people from political parties, and it was about youth getting involved and interested in politics.
Yes, absolutely. But already earlier on we talked about how dysfunctional they were, right. At least according to SRJ. So what are we inducting them into?
Sure.
The professor there saying that in 5 years' time you'll be leading these things. Oh no, sir, 5 years is too short.
It's short, yeah.
You need a huge experience before you can really run some of these institutions. So we've been fast-tracking things. There was a time it used to take 16 to 20 years before you became PS. So now things have changed. And the other day we read...
not for the better, by the way. I'll just throw that in.
Absolutely, not for the better. Look at these 5 years. And the other day we read in the paper somebody accusing the youth of being lazy and all of these things.
Sure.
No, the ministry, CSOs involved must sort of provide the youth. There's something that we need to do for the youth. How do you politicize them? They seem sort of depoliticized.
And kind of that's what he was trying to get them, to prod them by saying it impacts everything you do.
Absolutely.
So it's not about joining a political party necessarily.
Exactly.
Anything that happens to you, actually, in some way, politics is responsible for that thing, no matter what it is.
That was why Professor Ramadan Dume said, are you a politicized being? Everybody is politicized. They are implicated in politics, whether you like it or not, because you feel the effect of politics. Right. Sure. So this is it. How do we re-educate? How do we reorient? You know, earlier I said I'm not sure whether the youth are doing things any differently.
Sure.
I'm not surprised because there doesn't seem to be any project.
I mean, at this particular event, one of the speakers whose piece I was going to bring, but I thought he was kind of congratulating themselves by saying there are 18 youths from 18 political parties here, and there's been no violence. As if that was something to brag about.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on.
Absolutely. they need experience.
Sure.
Obviously. And I think he said that for rhetorical purposes than anything else. Look, who was it? I love this quote. It's been attributed to Seneca. If it weren't for adults around to rectify sometimes the errors of youth, there wouldn't be the state.
That's right.
So there has to be a certain conversation. You see, for me, this is how I see these things. Youth must take over this, youth must take over that. We all had to do our apprenticeships.
Well, that's right. Prepare yourself for whatever you're going to take over.
Honest to God, how long did it take you really for you to be able to develop, cultivate certain judgments? most of these decisions are about judgments. When you are young, you might be rich, wealthy in energy, but you are poor in experience, which is really the key. So there must be that intergenerational conversation. That's the only fruitful thing.
Sure.
Now, when you hear in the media how they treat youth, I'm like, don't turn it into a fetish. Don't turn it into this thing. Let's be realistic.
The youth.
They need to do their apprenticeships.
I think that's a good point to end on that one. Thank you, Mr. Mboj. And now on to our penultimate story, 9th story. It's recently been Aviation Safety Week. Why does that matter to you or to anybody else? It really does. Have a look.
Obviously, we live in an environment where we have massive, rapid development of settlements around our airports. And we all know these are major attractions for birds, because most settlements in our area come with production of a lot of rubbish that are attractive to birds. And where birds hover and the planes are trying to land or take off, certainly there will be collision. Firewood has become a problem. We have fenced the airport, there is enough security, but obviously this security is meant to keep animals out, not human beings. So what we've experienced in the past is we have seen kids from this neighborhood tampering with our fence just to access airside, maybe to look for firewood. So that's where we need the community's support so that we ensure and educate our people and advise our families and children that the airport, particularly the airside, is a no-go area.
I deliberately had a longer than normal insert there because I think he was making a very valid point. Because when it came up in the office that they were celebrating or commemorating rather Aviation Week, Aviation Safety Week, people were like, what's that got to do with me? And I think he's just explained to us what it has to do with each and every one of us.
Absolutely. The birds,
yes,
our rubbish,
indeed,
and the
rubbish
kids.
and children.
Yeah. Runway safety week. Yes, of course. But I thought, now this is interesting. I feel similar to what they thought up there. Because, I mean, regarding the kids, it's obvious. You know what I mean? You don't want kids there, but kids do these things all the time. Have proper security, isn't it? It's their responsibility to have proper
and the question I asked when they came back was that, okay, he's talked about communities growing up around airports. Have they gone to those communities and talked to them? Because for me, when you look at the people who were there, there didn't seem to be anybody from the community. There was the media, there were this, that, and that. But surely the community that you're saying are responsible for this and so on, those are the people we should be speaking to. Go out and meet them. Don't invite people and then give them a tour of the airport.
Absolutely.
I mean, what's that all about?
Is it a photo op?
Makes
you wonder it is something.
So even though it's an important matter, I thought, the way it was handled, I'm not so sure. Perhaps, mind you, it's a week long, so perhaps by the end of the week they've gone round and met these communities and told them, this is why it matters to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yes, as long as those affected, those in the neighborhood are involved in it and the like. Sure. But I really didn't see any reason in many ways of sort of having that media event, and that's really what it was.
I think that's what it was.
A media event.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. Takes us nicely onto our final story, Mr. Mboj and viewers. And this one, now, we've all been dealing with COVID-19, and you might think when you hear this story, you think, what's that got to do with COVID-19? Well, it's not so long ago that I was having arguments with people on social media who were convinced that COVID-19, when it started, was due to electromagnetic field radiation. You probably remember receiving some of those emails and messages into your inbox. However, they're trying to make some plans to actually deal with electromagnetic field radiation monitoring. Have a look.
Amadou Nyang, the ICT director at the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy, said Pura will use the equipment to check the intensity of radiation coming from EMF radiating source.
It is no secret that the government's policy direction to liberalize the telecommunications sector and the proliferation of towers and BTSs across the length and breadth of the country has brought in genuine concerns from citizens and environmentalists. it is important to indicate that while we prioritize ICTs in the transformation of lives and livelihoods of our people, it is equally important to factor in health and safety and environmental issues.
Health and safety of people, Mr. Barrows, I don't want to alarm anybody, but these kind of monitoring equipment have been standard now in the West because studies have shown in some areas, and they've still not been able to pin it down, where you have these masts belonging to various GSM operators, there have been high incidences of certain diseases and skin cancers and so on. And they've not been able to pin it down. And is it the electromagnetic field that's causing it and so on? So it's good that finally here in the Gambia we have the equipment that can monitor this.
Oh, absolutely. With this radiation bit, I mean, for a long time, there's been all sorts of rumors. And,
that's right.
You know, and what do you call it, conspiracy theories, even about even the phones.
Yeah, indeed. 5G causes COVID, etc., etc. I heard all of that, yeah.
So as Mr. Job said, so far there is no hard evidence that low levels, as it were, of radiation would cause severe damage. That's what we know so far. That's said. Even though I've also read somewhere that that might be so, but it increases the risks of having cancer in the long time, in a lifetime, as it were. So, and what effect might it have on pregnant women, on the fetuses? Obviously, they say some high levels, obviously, because right now, low levels of radiation, we're all taking in.
Well, yes, exactly.
Low levels
low
levels of radiation. But still, there are international standards.
Indeed, there are.
Certain thresholds are set.
Sure.
We should keep to them. And it is a good thing that we've got the monitoring machine to make sure that we keep to them.
As I say, because I think at some point, just as happened in other countries, particularly in the West, there will grow up a movement of people who will start to advocate for why are you not monitoring this, etc., etc. So in a way, it is really good that better late than never. I mean, as I said, they've been doing it in some 15, 20 years in other countries, but we have it here now, and hopefully we'll be able to get the results of that monitoring, and they'll be able to tell us what they found. And it's not just, as you said in the other story, a photo op. Let's hope this is something real.
Absolutely. Come on, in our age, two factors, as I see it, really would really get up out of our difficulties, or at least help put us in the right direction. Technology and our techniques of doing things.
Sure.
Essentially, yes. We live in that kind of age. So everywhere, you want each sector, every sector, to have the requisite technology they need to function well, to perform their duties.
Indeed, yes.
So that must be really a priority. How do we put in technology everywhere? With the technique bit, to me, that comes with institutional reform in many ways. Techniques of doing things. There's got a bit of science in it, and the other bit is art. Everybody knows that when it comes to management or organization, it takes some creativity, some art to it as well.
Indeed.
So this is the key. So obviously, wonderful things. Let's make sure we use it. We can maintain it. The usual buts, the usual question marks,
indeed.
And the like, of course.
Sure, and the like.
And others, you know, sort of take a leaf out of the book. Let's try to get more.
That's it. A beautiful point to end on, and a beautiful point to end the show. As ever, Mr. Mboj, thank you for your interjections. And as ever to the viewers, thank you for watching. Until the next time, goodbye.